Thank you so much for tuning in to the Healing Over Everything podcast. I am your host, T. And for the very first episode, I thought it would be fitting to discuss a topic that is relevant to the season that we're currently in. And with Valentine's Day on the horizon, I believe it is appropriate to start our conversation with love, right? This is a show that promotes and encourages introspection and being self aware. So I believe that we should be conducting a self analysis session as often as we can, right? That could be quarterly or even annually. But because we're constantly experiencing life and all the trauma that it brings, we need to be assessing our lives and our responses to those experiences to really bring them to resolution. So, when it comes to love, as we know, there are various types of love, right? Including passionate or romantic love, friendship or platonic love, familial love. But the one that we're going to focus on the most today in our conversation is that of self love. So now, if you approach love from a biblical perspective, which for me is the most insightful definition, this is a scripture that is quoted maybe about 80% of weddings, right? It's one that we've heard over and over and over, but I think that it really lays out the characteristics that we need to look for when we're trying to identify love. So the scripture is in First Corinthians, and it says that love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. That's a huge one. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves. Love never fails. So to me, King James really did his big one with that definition. So that was right on the money. It's a perfect definition. So let's dissect that a little bit. In preparation for the show, I actually drafted up a few questions to really get us thinking about the definition of love and how it relates to the healing that we're all going through and our ability to be successful at our efforts. And I want you to answer these questions as we go along and be honest and transparent. And if you can't answer them during the show, just jot them down and give yourself time to reflect and then just come back and answer those questions. But the way that we're going to start, our very first question is, who was the first person to introduce you to love? Now, for me, that person was my father. He really helped to shape my definition of love. And it's because of him that that I actually view love as a safe place. Um, I see love as a safe place where I'm always protected, right? And because of that, because of his introduction and the way that he showed it to me, that's actually a prerequisite for me when I'm looking for a romantic partner, is that I have to feel safe with that person, right? I have to feel protected. So, who was it for you? And then, how did that introduction shape your life? Was it a positive or a negative introduction? And because of it, do you have a healthy interpretation of love? You know, that's the very first question that we're going to start with. And then while you're thinking of that or writing it down, we'll move on to the next question. And that is, how would you define love, right? So if you encountered a person on the street who may be foreign to earth, right? And didn't know what love is, and you had to define it for him or them, what would you say that love is, right? I would say that love is an emotion that everyone really is in search of, right? But really few find. I was so surprised, and I don't know why I was surprised, but I have a few friends and associates that I asked. We were in conversation, and they mentioned they had never been in love before, and they were a little bit older than I was, and that just really, it actually saddened me because I know how beneficial love is to the spirit. So it really just kind of shook me to know that that person had never experienced love before. So I would actually uh go back and kind of follow up with them and find out how they would define it, since they had never been in love. But so what is your definition of love, right? um I would say that, in addition to it being emotion, that an emotion that everyone's in search of but never really finds, I would also say that when it's right, when love is right, that it is patient, that it is kind, that it's forgiving, that it's supportive, that it's considerate, right? And it doesn't find fault, it's enduring. That's what I would say that love is for me. That's my definition. But what is your definition? And is it based on your first experience, or is it a collection of all the experiences that you've had to date? Right? Some people are really soured forever by what other people have shown them love to be. Right? And then some people go on an extreme hunt to actually open themselves up to finding the true definition and meaning of love because of a negative experience they had. So, which one are you? Right? For me, my introduction, because it was a positive one, was what shaped my image. But all the other experiences as well after that solidified my definition. That's just me. Next question. Have you ever been in love? Now, this is a big one. Have you ever been in, air quotes, in love? Right? Now, when I actually asked myself this question, I had to chuckle a little bit because it made me recall a time when I was younger and I thought I was in love for the first time. I was about 11 years old. I was in the sixth grade. I know for certain I was in the sixth grade. So I think I was 11 or 12, something like that. And I had my first little boyfriend. And I remember his name, but I'm not going to say it, right? Just in case he's listening. But after, a few weeks of us, meeting in the cafeteria and playing on the playground, those type of things, we started talking on the phone. And at the end of our conversations, when we would talk, he would tell me that he loved me. Now, remember I told you that my father was my first introduction to love, but actually in my household growing up, we were not the type of family to say I love you. So I had never heard those words said to me. So when he told me that he loved me, I didn't really have the language to say the words back to him. I had never been given permission by my family to release those words into the atmosphere. So instead of me saying, I love you to him, I would spell it out, which is hilarious. But he would say, I love you. And I would just say, I love you. And that's how we would, that's how we would kind of, end our conversations. But yeah, I had never been given permission, but yeah, so getting back to my answer. Yes, I have been in love, and I actually had the pleasure of being married to an amazing man for over 20 years, and I believe that that really solidified my definition of what love was. Because of that relationship, I feel like I know what love looks like, feels like, smells like, all of the things, right? And through the process of learning what love actually was during that time, I actually learned how to love myself through that situation, and to really never settle for mediocre, right? Especially when it comes to me. But fast forward to the partner that I have now, I never actually thought that I would be in love again, right? So I thought that my first relationship would be a one and done. It was for an extended period of time, but I always say that the universe always provides, and I'm grateful for a second chance at love. But thank God for Jesus. I've had it twice, right? So, how are we doing so far? Are you getting a good picture of how your definition of love has been formed by your life experiences? All right, so moving on. Next, do you know your love language? Now, this is a concept that was developed by a man named Gary Chapman. He wrote a book called The Five Love Languages. And just to list them off really quickly, they are acts of service, quality time, physical touch, receiving gifts, and words of affirmation. I think those really kind of define themselves and don't need further explanation. But when I answered this question, it was really easy for me. My love languages are physical touch and words of affirmation. So I'm very much a kiss me on my forehead type of girl, right? I like hand holding. If I'm in a romantic relationship, I like to be in close proximity to the person that I'm with. I like, hand on my knee if we're watching TV, if we're in the bed snuggling up before bed. My feet have to be on you, something like that, right? I'm very much a physical touch type of person. And then with words of affirmation, for me, I need you to support me. Tell me when I'm doing good. Tell me I look beautiful. It's not ego. It's really just I like to be affirmed, and especially by the person that I'm in a love relationship with. And that's also in a platonic relationship as well. And it is give. I don't expect you to uh, give me words of affirmation and I'm not affirming you. I'm going to do the same thing. But that's big for me. Okay, so now a follow up to that question, and one that is extremely relevant to the conversation that we have right now, is how do you best express love to others, right? So, again, for me, my number one way of expressing love is verbally. I really do believe in telling people that I love them. And that's because I never want them to doubt it, right? Some people go to their graves not knowing how someone felt about them and if they really love them because they never said it. And then also, of course, I know that another reason that I'm so adamant about vocalizing that is because I didn't hear it as a child. So I, as a mom, always told my children that I love them often. And I wanted to make sure from an early age that I gave them the language that they needed so that they had permission to say it back to me. Another way that I express love is by giving gifts. I like to give gifts. Some may see that as, maybe like you're trying to buy someone's affection. I don't see it that way. I think it is a reciprocal exchange, right? I feel like if you made me feel love, my way of showing my appreciation and the way that I want to show you that you are also loved is by giving gifts. So that's just the way that I personally express love. And moving on again, do you believe in unconditional love? Now, my answer to this question may sound a bit contradictory to some people, but it is my truth, right? And my answer is actually going to be twofold. From a spiritual perspective, I absolutely believe in unconditional love, and that's because I believe in God, right? And I believe that God loves us perfectly, and His love comes without judgment. And there's absolutely nothing that we can do to separate us from His love. I believe that He's committed to loving us no matter what, and that's that, right? That's that on that. Now, if we think about it from a human perspective, um, I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult. Um, and that's because as humans, we do put stipulations on love, right? We write these invisible clauses, all these what ifs or ifs. And the ifs is what is not unconditional, right? So if you gain weight, my love might stop. Or if you don't pay my bills and take care of me, I can't love somebody that ain't gonna take care of me and pay my bills. Or if you don't do what I want you to do, if you don't conform. Or a big one is, a man wants a woman that is going to submit. If you don't submit to me, I can't love a woman that ain't going to submit to me. What are your stipulations? There are a lot of them. And for that reason, I really, from a human perspective, don't think that unconditional love is something that I'll see in this lifetime. And that's just my answer. Again, it might seem a little bit contradictory, but it is what it is. But are you seeing a connection? If not, let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. Okay, so we are almost to the end of the questions, but this next one is one I want you to take a little bit more thought on, and that is, what are your expectations of love, right? So I talked about a little bit earlier. Because of my father, I expect love to feel safe, right? That's number one for me. And I remember actually being asked to give advice to a longtime friend of mine who was getting married. And my advice was actually simple. I told them, in order to have a successful relationship, that there needed to be three things. And these are three additional expectations of love for me. And that's compassion, compromise, and kindness. I think those are really huge in the love space, right? You have to really be willing to give those things. Those are some expectations that I have of love. And also reciprocity, right? Give me what I give you. We have to have balance when it comes to love. So, lastly, and this is going to tie it together with self love, do you love yourself the way you expect others to love you? Now, this one I want you to think about and really give a clear, concise, unadulterated, vulnerable answer, right? I want you to just really take time with this one because that's important, right? So for me, I can honestly say at this moment, where we are today with me recording this podcast, that yes, do. I do love myself the way that I expect others to love me. But that was not always the case, right? So there was a time where I had very negative self talk and I was not kind to myself, nor did I show myself any type of compassion or grace in any way. But right now, today, I've allowed myself to show myself the type of love that I expect others to show me. And it took a long time and it was a long road, but we made it, right? So I want you to answer that question honestly and truthfully and see where it takes you. See it where it takes you on the journey. So now I want you to think about the way that you love yourself, right? So I want you to understand how your concept of love really does contribute to the healing process and how your love style is essential to the healing journey. And self love is going to be your best friend during the times of healing and transition. You have to determine what you need from yourself while you're walking the path. And it doesn't matter if you're trying to heal physically, spiritually, mentally, or emotionally. You're going to have to start loving yourself enough to be committed to seeing the process through to the end, right? And I know that the concept of love may be foreign to some of you, and it does depend on the traumas that you've experienced, but I want you to embrace it and make it a daily practice and allow yourself the space to evolve and grow into the person that you desperately want to be and see the results that you want to see. So, the purpose of the episode is to show you the importance of the practice of self love when it comes to healing. Not only, like I said, your physical body, but any traumas that you've experienced that have been formed that have formed a lot of your negative responses, right? So it is really a prerequisite to healing. Love is a prerequisite to healing, period. Having self love means that you accept yourself fully, that you treat yourself with kindness and respect, and that you're nurturing and growing and really being open to being a better person for your overall well being. You're treating yourself kind and making yourself a priority. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people, and especially women, they think being selfish or taking time for themselves or for ourselves is wrong, right? That we shouldn't do that, that we should make everybody else a priority, our children, our spouses, our job, whatever, we put before ourselves. But in fact, it's the complete opposite. By taking the time that you need to decompress and to refresh your strength, it actually makes you an asset to those around you. And because you've allowed yourself the time to reflect, that you now have a better perspective and a healthier approach to whatever it is that you're trying to tackle, right? For example, with it being the beginning of a new year, a lot of us make resolutions and goals, right? Of doing things like losing weight. That's a huge one for us ladies. And by the time the first day of the month rolls around, January 1st, we already talked ourselves out of why we not going to do it. You came up with so many excuses as to why you can't. Your schedule too busy. It's too expensive to eat healthy. It's too cold outside. I don't want to go to the gym. You giving yourself every excuse in the book. And if you took a step back in that situation and really applied the practice of self-love, you would approach that a lot differently, right? So with loving yourself, just like with loving others, you have to make a sacrifice, right? How many times have we been asked to do something that we really didn't want to do because we were tired or, whatever, we just didn't want to do it, but we did it, right? Let's put another spin on it. So let's say you were kicking it with a guy and he called you and it's 11 o'clock at night, you're in the bed, you chilling, you got your night clothes on, and you nestled up real good with your blanket, you know and he calls you and he either asks you to come over, he asks you to come over or come and do something for him, and you really feeling this guy, you really love this person. So even though you nestle warm in your bed, you get your little happy ass up and you do what it is that he wants you to do. Right? Even our children. Ma, can you take me to the mall? It's Saturday morning. You, again, nestled up in your bed or, you know, just cleaning up or whatever the case, whatever you're doing. And because we love our children and we want to give them what they, some treats here and there along the way, even though we don't want to do it, we sacrifice and we get up and we do what it is that they want us to do. Right? And in those moments, we're considering others' needs and making provisions for them. But what about our needs? Right? If I need to lose this 30 pounds because I want to get off my medication or whatever the case may be, whatever your motivation is, but I don't feel like going to the gym, I don't feel like eating right. What about sacrificing for yourself? You sacrifice for that man, you sacrifice for your children. Now let's sacrifice for yourself. This is something that you said that you wanted to do, that the doctors told you that they needed you to do. Love yourself enough to make that sacrifice for your health and your overall well-being. So I've made it a point to reiterate that it doesn't matter if you're healing physically, spiritually, emotionally, or mentally, you're worth the sacrifice, right? You are worth the sacrifice. So we went through those questions for a reason. It wasn't to be intrusive, but it was really for you to recognize if you have a healthy view of love, And then if you don't have a healthy view of love, why? And it's also to have you verbalize your expectations. And now that you have done that, to make you accountable to yourself, to provide yourself with every single thing on your list that you said that you required or expected of love, right? Be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself. Be honest. Give yourself the things that you need. If you need love to be a safe space, then you create the environment that you need to grow and thrive. And if in a relationship you wouldn't tolerate someone giving you a half-ass effort, then don't give a half-ass effort to yourself, right? Be in it 1000% and commit to showing up for you. And that's how we're going to end it. That's how we're going to end it. So go back, re-listen to the podcast if you need to. Like I said, if you weren't able to answer the questions right now, write them down, but really go over those things and make the decision today that you're going to choose yourself and that you're going to do the necessary things to move forward in your process of healing. And now, as a practice, I'm going to end every show with an affirmation or a mantra. So I want you to take this one with you and say, I am able and capable to succeed in every area of my life. And I wish you well on your journey. Thank you again for tuning in to the Healing Over Everything podcast. I am your host, T, and we'll talk soon.